Miles Rourke handed me divorce papers at our kitchen island, while Seattle rain stitched silver lines down the condo windows behind him. His podcast blazer was still on. His sponsor call smile still polished. And his phone kept flashing with the live stream reminder he had not silenced. "Take the archive, Cassidy," he murmured, sliding a black hard drive across the marble like payment for disappearing quietly. Old interviews. Rough cuts. Notes. Dead folders. "You built that mess, so keep it." I looked past him first, because Bryn Ellison stood in the hallway with her network badge turned outward. She had not stepped inside, yet her camel coat, red nails, and careful half-smile already behaved like they owned the air. Miles followed my eyes, stiffened, then softened his voice into the version America trusted through headphones. "Bryn and I are moving forward with the show. I need this clean before tonight." Clean was a strange word from a man who had let me scrub his facts, protect his guests, and stitch his reputation together for 7 years. I opened the agreement page by page while Bryn watched my hands, waiting for trembling, pleading, some broken performance she could repeat later. The terms gave Miles the public feed, the host identity, the distribution pitch, and the studio lease he had already started calling his. Then I reached the asset schedule, original archive, raw recordings, consent forms, edit histories, production notebooks, and all working files transferred to Cassidy Greer. My pulse stayed quiet, but something inside me locked into place. Miles had not given me leftovers. He had given me the signatures, the timestamps, the proof that his famous voice had been standing on mine. I signed, pushed the papers back, and wrapped my fingers around the hard drive. I don't take what isn't mine, Miles, but I never return what someone was foolish enough to undervalue. Bryn's smile thinned. Miles exhaled, and the live stream reminder chimed again, bright and cheerful, like a launch already beginning to fall apart. I rented a small studio above a coffee shop in Capitol Hill before sunrise, because the archive felt too dangerous inside my purse. The room smelled like dust, burnt espresso, and old carpet glue, but the desk was wide enough for 7 years of buried work. I plugged in the hard drive and watched folder after folder bloom across the screen with names Miles had never bothered learning. Raw interviews, release forms, court transcripts, music licenses, guest notes, and every rough cut I had saved before his famous voice touched them. The first file I opened was Dana Rollins. Take 4, where her breathing cracked before she trusted me enough to continue. I remembered calling her the next morning, not for content, not for drama, but because she had sounded hollow after the recording. Miles had used that episode to win 3 awards and a standing ovation at a live show in Portland. My credit sat at the bottom of the notes, under production support, small enough to miss unless someone already knew where to look. By 8, Adrian Weller was sitting across from me with his reading glasses low and his coffee untouched beside the laptop. He had spent years in audio legal affairs, and he did not waste breath on sympathy when documents were more useful. "Do you have the original releases?" Cassidy. Not scans from Miles's folder? I turned the screen toward him and opened the signed forms by date. "Do you have timestamps before Bryn's sponsor deck?" I opened the edit logs, and his face changed before his voice did. Adrian leaned closer, scrolling slowly through the files Miles had treated like digital garbage after taking the public feed for himself. "This is chain of title," he said, quiet enough that the words landed harder. "If the distributor buys his show without clearing this, their legal department has a problem before launch." I looked at the folders, at my notes in every margin, at the signatures he had never read because he only trusted applause. "I don't want noise," I answered, closing Dana's file before her voice could break again. "I want everyone to read the fine print," Miles skipped while he was practicing sincerity. Miles and Bryn walked into the sponsor preview at a downtown Seattle hotel with the kind of confidence rented by good lighting and bad paperwork. I was not in that room, but Adrian forwarded every update as it happened, each message shorter than the last. Bryn's deck sold the new season as survivor-centered storytelling, with Miles standing beside a microphone, chin lowered, eyes soft enough for donors. Cassidy stepped back for personal reasons. Miles offered when someone asked about production leadership, and Bryn moved the slide forward before the lie could cool. The room had been built to flatter him, with sparkling water, branded folders, and sponsor reps waiting to buy a cleaner version of his conscience. Then Adrian's preservation letter reached the distributor's legal team, and every sponsor counsel copied on the campaign review. It did not accuse, rant, or beg. It simply demanded that sponsor decks, Slack exports, edit histories, release forms, and usage notes be preserved immediately. Phones began lighting across the table, one after another, and Miles kept talking for 3 seconds before he realized the silence had changed shape. Bryn tried to keep the presentation moving, but her finger missed the trackpad once, then twice, and the next slide sat frozen on Dana Rollins's quote. A wellness sponsor leaned forward and asked whether Dana's original release allowed her words to be used in paid promotional material. Miles turned toward Bryn. Bryn turned toward legal counsel, and nobody in that expensive room seemed willing to rescue the sentence hanging between them. By the time Adrian texted me, signing call paused. My coffee had gone cold beside the hard drive Miles had called old material. Nothing exploded, which made it worse for them. Because grown-up rooms do not need shouting when liability walks in wearing page numbers. The distributor did not cancel on the spot, but they froze the deal until every release, timeline, and source file could be verified against the archive in my possession. Bryn's polished language suddenly looked like fingerprints, and Miles's famous sincerity could not explain why the legal backbone of his show was sitting with his ex-wife. I closed Adrian's message, looked at the folders glowing on my screen, and understood the first real payment had just stopped moving. By afternoon, Adrian forwarded the Slack export, and Bryn's clean new life started staining itself in writing. She had typed, "Cassidy will never fight this if we frame it as burnout." Then attached the sponsor deck with my role reduced to former production help. I sat in the Capitol Hill studio with one hand around a paper cup gone soft from heat, reading the line twice. Miles had not cheated with a confused woman. He had cheated with someone busy building a staircase over my name. The fight in Miles's apartment reached me through the message trail before either of them admitted anything out loud. Bryn sent 3 clipped texts about legal needing him quiet, and Miles answered that she had pushed the deck too fast because she wanted producer credit before the distributor signed. Her reply landed harder than any confession. "You promised the archive was dead, Miles, so do not make me the idiot here." That sentence gave Adrian what he needed, because Bryn knew the archive existed and still helped sell around it. Dana Rollins's statement arrived before sunset, signed, dated, and careful enough to sound stronger than anger. She confirmed she had consented to a fact-checked episode, not a paid campaign where her words were clipped into bait for sponsor money. That one page turned Bryn's job from messy to dangerous, because her initials sat beside the promotional cut that used Dana's voice without clearance. Adrian called it a usage problem, but under the legal language, I heard something plainer. Bryn had decorated her promotion with another woman's worst memory. Miles stopped answering Bryn, and when he finally did, his message sounded like a man searching for a clean exit. He wrote that she should not contact sponsors, should not contact legal, and should let him handle the situation publicly. Bryn fired back that there was no public situation until he dragged me into divorce before launch night and handed me the files that mattered. I closed the laptop after that, because 2 people who had called me disposable were discovering they had disposed of their own protection. Patricia Rourke hosted the dinner in Bellevue, as if good linen could turn public rot into family pride. The private room smelled of lemon butter, white wine, and expensive flowers, with Miles seated beside Bryn while Patricia called her a blessing with perfect timing. A local media couple sat near the window, smiling too carefully, and several relatives kept glancing at Miles, like scandal was only weather passing through. Patricia lifted her glass and murmured, "Some women build a man up, and some only make him smaller," while Bryn lowered her lashes like modesty had been rehearsed. I would not have known about the dinner if Patricia had not invited me by accident in the family group thread. Her next message arrived too late. Sharp and foolish, telling everyone not to mention Cassidy unless they wanted the mood ruined. I walked in after the appetizers, carrying no anger on my face. Only Dana Rollins's attorney letter and the sponsor deck with Bryn's edits marked cleanly. Patricia's smile died before I reached the table, and Miles rose halfway from his chair as if standing could erase evidence. "I came because my name was already in this room," I said, placing the folder beside Patricia's wineglass. The media couple recognized the distributor logo on Adrian's notice, and Bryn's hand moved toward the deck before she remembered everyone was watching. I opened to the page where Dana's quote had been cut for paid promotion, with Bryn's initials sitting beside the revision timestamp. "If you want to discuss my place in Miles's life, at least read the document showing who tried to remove me from my own work." Patricia stared at the page, then at Bryn, and the room turned quiet in a way no polite family could repair. Miles whispered my name, but it came out thin, because the folder had already answered better than any speech he could give. Bryn tried to say the deck was only a draft, but the frozen signing call, Dana's letter, and Adrian's preservation notice were stacked in order. I left before dessert, while Patricia sat stiffly at the head of her beautiful table, realizing her son had not lost a difficult wife. He had lost the woman who kept his borrowed life believable. Dana Rollins went public the next morning with a statement so plain it cut deeper than outrage. She did not describe the worst night of her life, did not perform pain for strangers, and did not mention my divorce at all. She wrote that she had trusted me because every question came with consent. Every edit came back for review, and every silence was respected. Then she wrote that Miles and Bryn had turned her carefully approved words into paid promotional bait for a season she had never cleared. By noon, the story had stopped sounding like a bitter marriage collapsing behind a microphone. Podcast reviewers began posting side-by-side screenshots of Dana's release language and Bryn's sponsor deck, circling the gap Miles had tried to smile through. A wellness sponsor pulled its campaign first, writing that survivor-centered storytelling could not be used as a slogan after consent had been treated like decoration. Miles uploaded a short apology before dinner, his face pale under apartment lighting, his voice still trained to sound wounded and reasonable. He spoke about pressure, growth, blurred communication, and the difficulty of scaling a beloved independent show too quickly. He did not say Dana's name, did not say mine, and did not explain why Bryn's initials sat beside the promotional cut. I watched the video once in the Capitol Hill studio, with the archive open beside me and Dana's original release glowing on the screen. When Miles lowered his eyes at the end and whispered, "I'm listening," the comments were already asking why he had not listened before money entered the room. I expected satisfaction to hit harder, but what came first was something quieter and heavier. Dana texted me 3 words. "You believed me." And I sat there longer than I meant to with my hands folded around the phone. The work I had done in private had not vanished just because Miles stood in public and claimed the microphone. It had stayed inside signatures, check-in calls, careful edits, and one woman brave enough to say her story was not his product to sell. Miles came to the Capitol Hill studio 2 days after the distributor terminated the signing call, wearing a hoodie I had once bought him for editing nights. His beard had grown uneven, his eyes were red, and his phone kept vibrating with names he no longer had the courage to answer. He stood between the doorway and the desk, like a guest who had forgotten he used to own every room he entered. "Cassidy, I need 5 minutes," he breathed, and the old warmth in his voice sounded rented now. I did not invite him closer, but I did not close the door either, because some endings deserve witnesses even when there are only boxes of hard drives. Behind me, Dana's release sat open beside Adrian's latest email, and Miles noticed both before he looked directly at my face. The distributor overreacted, and Bryn made mistakes. But if you tell them this was personal, the show can survive. He swallowed hard, then added, "You know what that show means to me." I let him keep talking until the performance ran out of road. He said Bryn had pressured him. The network had moved too fast. And nobody understood how complicated independent media became once sponsors entered the room. What he did not say was Dana's name, or my name, or the word stolen, though every folder behind me knew the language perfectly. "You are not sorry you erased me, Miles," I answered, keeping my hand flat on the desk. "You are sorry the erasure had timestamps." His mouth opened, then closed, because the archive had taken away the one thing he loved most, room to improvise. I asked whether he remembered who called Dana after take 4, when her breathing changed and the room went quiet. He looked toward the hard drives instead of answering, and that silence told me he had never once wondered who repaired the people his episodes used. "You did not lose me when you slept with Bryn," I said, watching the words reach him slowly. "You lost me when you believed work done behind a closed door would never need a name." Miles lowered himself into the chair across from me, but it looked less like sitting than collapse. His famous voice, the one strangers trusted in their cars and kitchens, had nothing left to wrap around the truth. I gathered Dana's release, closed Adrian's email, and waited until he understood I would not rescue the brand built from my quiet. Outside, rain hit the windows softly, and for once, Miles Rourke had to hear silence without me editing it into mercy. The settlement came 2 weeks later, not with screaming, but with signatures that finally knew where they belonged. Miles lost the distribution deal, the sponsor campaign, and the right to use any raw interview or working file from the archive he had given away. The network placed the season under review. Bryn Ellison was terminated after the Slack export showed her role in cutting me out, and Patricia stopped appearing at media dinners where my name might come up. Dana Rollins received a written apology, control over whether her episode could ever air again, and the quiet dignity of deciding what happened to her own voice. Adrian helped me lease a brighter studio 3 blocks from the old one, with clean windows, honest contracts, and a small brass sign by the door. It did not look dramatic from the sidewalk, just Cassidy Greer audio, but I stood there longer than anyone reasonable would have stood. Dana came in for the first planning session, carrying pastries and a folder of notes, then smiled at the release form because every clause was written in plain English. "This time, I know who is holding the story," she told me, and for once, the sentence did not feel like a burden. Miles tried one final email, careful, polite, and empty, asking whether we could someday speak without attorneys involved. I deleted it after reading the subject line, because some doors do not need slamming when they were already closed by evidence. Bryn moved to another city. Patricia's beautiful table went quiet, and the show that had carried Miles's voice became a warning whispered through the industry. People did not say he lost everything because his wife was bitter. They said he lost it because he mistook invisible work for disposable work. On my first morning alone in the new studio, I played the rough cut of an episode with no borrowed sincerity in it. My name sat at the top of the project folder, not hidden under support credits, not buried beneath a man's applause. I listened until the final note faded, then turned the volume down and watched sunlight move across the door. For the first time in years, the quiet in the room belonged to me, and I did not have to edit it into anything softer.